Are Amazon Game Studios a little bit too slow? For me, there's two big questions here. There's the speed at which we get content updates, and there's the speed at which things get changed. So that's the two things we're going to talk about. But first, if you want to support the channel and help me grow the channel, becoming a YouTube member is the best way to do so. And the first thing I want to talk about really is the rate at which things get changed. Not new content, we'll come to that in a moment. And here, my personal opinion is that Amazon Game Studios with New World is a little bit slow to make changes that are obviously going to happen. My standout example of this is with Expedition Orbs. Now, the new players among you might not even realize that this was an issue because this actually got changed early August/late July. And the issue was simple. You needed to craft these orbs to get into expeditions, and a lot of people didn't like that. You were effectively paying to get into an expedition. Paying to do endgame dungeons felt really bad. And it was pretty obvious early on that these would be removed. In fact, Amazon even said it themselves in a dev update. Now, if we're generous and say that they said that in January, it still took them about 8 months for that to actually happen. And when they made the change, what did they do? They made it so that the amount of expeditions you could do in a day was capped. They reworked the amount of gold that you got. And they also made some changes to stone cutting to make up for the lack of utility now, because you used to have to craft them via stone cutting. There's probably a few little things they did that I don't remember, but they were the main things. And I was left wondering at the time, did that really take 8 months? Did that really need that amount of time before you could check that and come up with that system? It was obvious to most people at launch that this system wasn't really going to stand the test of time. Although it actually did have some positives, I think the negatives far outweighed them. So then the question is, why did it take that long? Now, they might argue that they needed to rethink how they were going to deal with stone cutting because it was losing out some of its value. Sure, that's possibly a reason. My argument to that would have been, you'd have been better just actually getting it sorted so it was free to enter, and then saying to the stone cutters out there, hey, we need to do this sort of quickly, so we'll come back to you guys. We apologize. For the health of the game long term, a smaller number of players will have to suffer. I think that would have been okay. Yes, they would have had a bit of feedback of complaining, but that's better than leaving it the way that it was for the amount of time that they left it. Now, one thing that they said early on, which is going to be a big feature of this video, is that they said in December that them moving quickly to fix things actually broke other things. So this might be why they took their time and worked on this a little bit more than you would think. And to be fair, I think that actually makes sense. But it's a little bit funny to me right now that we've had the recent exploit and dupe bug, because somehow, even when they're not rushed, these things still occasionally slip through the cracks. Now, I appreciate that you can't stop every bug ever, but I just find that a little bit ironic at the moment. And really though, this risk of doing things and breaking them, that's the reason that system updates are taking their time. Amazon Game Studios really don't want to break things after the torrid launch where things were broken a lot of the time. But unfortunately, the players are feeling this time duration. It's becoming blindingly obvious. There's more examples than just the expedition orbs. There is the territory rework system, which in my eyes, by the way, doesn't go far enough. But I was complaining about the territory inequality, I think in December last year in 2020. I think I was talking about the wealthy 1% even back then. And it took them pretty much a year before they addressed it. Well, before they started addressing it. As I said, I don't think it goes far enough. But I feel like they're slow in other areas as well. Cross-Realm Outpost Rush now is scheduled for what will be effectively well over a year and a half since the launch of the game. Again, it was pretty obvious that we were going to need that at some point. Gear sets are said to be about 1 year and a half after launch, which quite frankly in my eyes is pretty insane. There's no different colours for enemy abilities. That's not on the schedule, so I actually don't know when they'll fix that. There's no transmog till summer 2023. I actually don't think that's a big issue, and I think I understand the technical challenges behind that quite obviously, right? But there's also the fact that when we had the hype coming back for the game, they didn't make servers quickly enough. There were queues, and now we're seeing again they don't merge servers quickly enough. And there's probably other things that will definitely get changed at some point or are obvious to you guys, but they haven't done yet. So for me, in some ways, it's undeniable that Amazon Game Studios are sometimes a little bit slow, typically when it comes to systems. And sure, they're going to say it's all to stop bugs, and that it sort of makes sense, right? I actually agree with that. It makes sense. However, you as a consumer, me as a consumer, why should we care about that? It's almost like it's not our issue. We want a quality product and we don't want to wait too long. Yes, we're trying to have our cake and eat it, and I appreciate that. Do Amazon maybe need more staff to get what we want? Perhaps. I also think that the engine that the game is on, Lumberyard, which is like a modified Lumberyard, like Crisis Engine, CryEngine, whatever it was, I think that's probably not helping the cause. There's been quite a few issues now where you have to think that the coding is a little bit spaghetti. They're changing one thing over here and it's breaking something else and nobody really knows why. Yes, that seems to have got a bit better, but it's still not perfect, as we saw with the more recent exploit. And they obviously can't change engine, so the only thing they could do is maybe hire people to circumvent that, but that's at a cost. And they're not going to want to pay that because they also want to make money, right? Makes sense. But yeah, I think changing things like that, sometimes they're a little bit slow. Sometimes they're a little bit quicker, right? Not always. Now let's talk about content and actual like proper updates. And here I actually will defend Amazon a little bit. I think the rate at which we get new content is mostly good. The first year of content to me was absolutely popping. I think we had 3 new expeditions, we had the mutations, we had the seasonal events, we had new weapons, PvP Arena, new music profession, group finder, and of course it all capped off with Brimstone Sands update, which was pretty damn massive. The first 12 months was good. And now people look at the new roadmap for 2023 and they don't see much that really interests them. If you look at it on pure content that's actually applicable to level 60s already, well, in the next 9 months we're probably going to have 1 expedition, 1 raid boss. That's really it. To me, everything else is sort of system based or seasonal events or the main story quest being reworked, which is not applicable to most players. By the way, that's not to say I think that gear sets won't be huge for the game. I think gear sets and transmog will be absolutely massive and I'm very much excited for them. But I think you can look at the roadmap and think, hey, there's not actually that much for me this year, or at least in the next 2 quarters. And I don't necessarily think you'd be wrong there. And if you compare it to last year, I think it's a little bit less content-wise as well. But that's comparing year 1 to year 2, and I don't necessarily think that's fair. If you compare New World to other games, I think Amazon feels about the same. It doesn't feel like way worse or way better. And let's face it, Amazon are going to be working on something major for the end of 2023. Scott in the Forged in Eternum Q&A said that pretty much every year they want to do something major, a major content expansion. Not a paid expansion necessarily, but maybe a paid expansion, maybe some new zones, maybe something completely different. And if that was on the roadmap, maybe people would feel completely differently. But we know that something big is planned to come out at the end of 2023. We just don't know what it is. So for me, when it comes to new content, I don't really know the exact frequency that other games are doing theirs. Some will probably be a bit better, some will probably be a bit worse. That's just the way things go. New World, in a sense, feels completely fine to me, but I would be very interested if you disagree with me. Do let me know in the comments below. Try and give me some examples. I'd actually be genuinely curious. But overall, I think when it comes to new content, I don't think they're very slow. I think that's a reasonable rate at which they're going, especially depending on what's coming in 2023. We know they're working on that, and if that's something really, really big, then a quieter time leading up to that would make a lot of sense. So let's just hold up and see what we get. That's not to say I think people should play for the next 9 months. If you've done all the content you want to do, and you're at the peak of your performance and you're not really bothered in any of the new content coming out, you could just take a break. This isn't a subscription-based game. You can take a break and you're not losing anything. But yeah, for content, I don't think they're slow. For systems and changes, yes, I think they might be a little bit slow. Now, I appreciate these are technical challenges that I don't fully comprehend. I'm not a coder, I don't really know enough about it. But to outsiders like myself, some of these seem a little bit weird. Like enemy AoEs and healing circles and stuff like that, all being the same color as friendly, that just feels wrong to me. And it sort of seems like a simple change, but I'm guessing it's not. It's probably way more complicated than I can understand, right? But as a general consumer, as an outsider, you're like, what the hell? So again, maybe Amazon needs more people to make the things that we think should be quick, and the things that we think should be slower, then they can do those at the time that they're happy doing them. And as I said before, sometimes they actually do change things quickly depending on feedback. For example, when they announced that you would be able to increase your gear score over 600, they made it so you could only upgrade gear score 600 items. People kicked off and they changed it so you could upgrade 590 plus. And they did that pretty damn quickly. Now, I suspect that was probably like a bit of an easier challenge for them. Maybe it wasn't that difficult, but still, sometimes they do things quickly. And I don't want to say they don't, because that's some examples that they do. But yeah, I think the roadmap has got people a little bit confused. People see the roadmap and like, oh, we're not getting much content, and they think Amazon are slow. But I actually think that's sort of missing the target. I think it's these system updates that feel like the worst for me. And yes, the technical challenges are probably quite vast, but as consumers, we don't care about that. We want it now, we want to play it, we want it to be good. And if it's not, some people will be looking for that elsewhere. Unfortunately, that's just the way things go. Now, I hope those players will come back when we actually get good stuff, but if we consistently are slow, that might end up being a problem. So I'm perhaps being a little bit harsh on AGS, but this is just something that I've been thinking about for a little while, and I would love for these issues to be wrapped up a little bit quicker. Yes, at the same time, I also don't want exploits and dupes, so yeah. Do you agree with me? Did I completely miss the mark? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to help me grow the channel, becoming a YouTube member is truly the best way. I hope you have a most beautiful, beautiful day. Goodbye.